Hi, I'm Walter Rulser. You're watching from the Cape with Bass, hosted by Daniel.
Today we're here with great bass player Walter Ralsa. Walter, can you tell us what your first musical experience was?
Well, my first musical experience, I think it all started at church. I think growing up in Mitchell's Plain, Nakala communities, I think that's the one thing that's really standing out for us sometimes, just to keep you grounded in the sense. My mom, them going to church, so I was always the youngest one, or I am still the youngest one. But what happened was there was always the band at church, which was my space where I used to go sit. So I would be next to the drums because the first thing was always the drums for me. So I used to go sit next to the drums and just to listen as to what's really happening. And without you knowing in the back of your mind, you almost like um, listen, but also you store it up. So one day when as you grow up, you will realize that there's a lot that you know. Even with music, you will listen to music, but you actually listening to it without knowing that you would know it for the next 20, 50 years, even after that. So musically for me, that was the very first, just sitting there, having to look at the drummer, having to look at the guitarists, what they're doing. And it always intrigued me as a young boy way back already.
Oh, interesting, man. Can you tell us why the bass guitar? What drew you to the low notes?
Low notes, weirdly enough, I must say, I think when we grew up, there wasn't a lot of bass players. Hence, I started talking about the drums because I actually initially wanted to play drums. But then, when you come to church, when I was here as I grew up now, and then you look behind you, it's like a whole, like 10 lighties that want to play drums. And it was always a challenge because now the time that you get in to play, it's so little that you walk away actually knowing nothing or learning nothing. So then, one of our bases that was at our church, he was a policeman also. So what happened is he used to work shifts. So he couldn't make youth services and all these other odd services. So then he was like, don't you want to play bassman? And I was like, okay, yeah, because it was a gap and I know no one is running after this instrument because everybody's like going that way. That's when I started. My first introduction to bass was via the church or that guy that couldn't make it at the time.
What's this guy's name?
Um, he was Patrick Andries, but Patrick Andries. We used to be in a Nova Park way back, the Silo Pentecostal mission that time.
Interesting, man. Tell me, do you have any musical education?
Education, okay, my education, I would say, started with, if I'm talking about just learning from ear, was church. That's the foundation for me. Whatever makes me today who I am started from that point onwards. After that, my first real encounter musically with four basses or from a basis was Andre Fransman, Mark Fransman's brother. They used to be the band way back for me. And what happened with him was I was glad that he could took me under his wing, man. So that way, I used to go visit him and walk to his house just to play bass. And I mean, he had his whole family around, but he was always at space for me to just be there and be able to play bass so randomly while I'm there. And I mean, his kids was also small, so it's like, not that I was much older than them. But I used to go to his house and he was my first one-on-one teaching, whether it is just listening to a song and he would show me how to play it or some of his riffs that because he was into slapping and stuff like that. So that was my first one-on-one. After that, years later, I think as I grew up, you find guys just jamming here and there. So you pick up some information base-wise. But as I would say education-wise, then I will have to go to Sean Johannes. I think he had a few years at UCT already by then. So that was my very first, I would say, structural teaching around the bass. But I must say, even doing that, it sort of opened up my mind musically to a different world because obviously, if you listen to UCT students, they always used to have a different approach to music for me, man. And Son was one of those guys. I used to check him out on gigs and stuff like that. So he was my very first structural teacher, I would say. My very first bass teacher from that point onwards. Then forwarding 2 years later, about 2 years ago, then I met up with Ravino Isaacs with the Mitchell's Plain Music Academy. I thought, okay, look here, it's close by. Let me jump into it. And I always wanted to at least touch based on the theory side of music. I knew I might not do it full time in the sense, but I always just wanted to start somewhere. And for me, that was my entry point again, even if it comes to reading music or just understanding. So that taught me the beauty of music again. Because then I was forced to, because luckily for me, or I don't know if it was luckily, I actually didn't go as a bassist. So I actually went for keys. But also just to get, I didn't want to go in with a bass mindset, if you get what I'm saying. I actually wanted to find out what is music about, man. So like I said, I sort of started seeing the beauty of music, because obviously then you have your classical pieces that you need to study. And that blew my mind, because it changed your way of thinking while you're playing even. So if you say education, I think that is the most recent for me. I did it about 2 years almost. So yeah, but family life and work and all that takes over sometimes. So it was a bit hectic.
I understand. Can you tell us about the artists that you are currently working with, or have you been working with throughout the years?
Okay, throughout the years, I think there's the fortunate, unfortunate in the music scenes, where we all fortunate in different ways. Man. I would say when I think I was still in primary school. We used to have a pop band, I would say, or like a dance party band that was in our area. So what we used to do is myself, my brothers and friends, we used to sit up outside of the house. Then we used to play there. But now there was this pop band that used to be in the area, and they could always hear us playing. And they were my first, like my first gig where they approached me. And I mean, I was probably standing at 5 then, and they approached me to play. But at that time, they had like a Samick bass, and I was no Samick was always a big bass, and the bass amp was basically my size at that. So that was my first real encounter, even playing in a real band. Besides church band, I'm talking about, when you talk about secular guys, they're very strict with certain things, man. So for me as a youngster, it was very come and go, obviously, because my parents wasn't happy with the setup that it was in, but obviously because nice neighbors in the area, so it was sort of allowed. That was my very first, and I'm talking about primary school. Then after that, the guy that stood out for me was, I don't know if you know Mahmoud. He used to sit at the waterfront, the guy with the Cecil can guitar.
Years ago, like, yeah.
Years ago. And I mean, he's been there for years. And I mean, even prior me meeting him, he's been playing and he's been there. So one of my friends, Benjamin Jacobs, he's a keyboard player. He used to, or at least Mahmoud knew family of him, like Francois Jacobs. So Benjamin was approached to play keys, and then I was approached to play, because myself and Benjamin then we used to jam together, play together at church and youth and that. So I was approached to even assist with Mahmoud's album. And I mean, for me, again, coming from church background, coming from just running around on the streets, and here you find this guy Mahmoud. And I mean, at times we used to think he was small in his capacity as to what he's doing at the waterfront. But only meeting him and being in his space and in his world, I've discovered how big this guy is and how rich he is with music, man, and the knowledge around music. So he was actually my very first artist, I would say, that actually went into studio and record. And I mean, it sounded weird, because even the music that he would do, it's music that my parents would maybe listen to. So as a young boy, you ended up listening to all this vals and all, he had his own style of music, obviously that suited him. But as a youngster, he took us in and he actually almost like shaped us into this. And even with the introduction into studio, what he did was he used to have a smaller setup at home, studio setup, and that was almost like just to ease us into the studio, because he didn't want to waste time and waste money in studio. So what happened was he used to sit up at home, and then we run through all the songs. Then we go into studio. Then we literally spend, I would say, 1 day on a whole album. I'm talking about 12 songs 1 day. And that is, I know Denver Furnace was supposed to be the drummer, but he couldn't make it. Then we had a drum loop or a track. You see these small boxes that they used to use. Then we just came in afterwards, obviously, to do his thing. And even quality for me versus other years of recording maybe with different artists. And I think that was the one thing that stood out for me, as how you go about even doing that, or going into studio and all that. But Mahmoud was the guy that actually got me into that.
Is he still alive?
No, that I was forgot to say, he's the late Mahmoud.
Okay.
He passed on probably about 6-7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, he was very much older than myself and the other guys, but really he had a heart for music, man. And I think once you find that in a person, that was I was sold out actually for him because we did everything with him and for him. It wasn't even about the music anymore. That was Mahmoud. That was my very first artist, I would say. And then after that, years, I can almost say not very much. Yeah, years after that, I met. You see, it's the weird thing is sometimes the setups that we move in and the crowds that move in, you never know who's there, who's seeing, who's listening. So even trying to understand how I even got to these guys, I'm not even sure. But anyway, then we met a guy named Kanija Naidu. He's from Lenasia in Joburg. In Joburg? Yeah. But he used to work for JCQ. So your Craig Parks, your late Quentin Ralph, he was in that circle. And then he was busy with his album. But somehow it pushed where, I think it was just before the whole Jazzathon thing and all that, that he had to prep for this thing. And then I was also approached with friends of mine that we've played together to be part of that album again. So Kanye was like a step up in the sense of a recording artist versus this is now not just indoors because then Kanye even took us outside. So then you had your jazzathons, we had a few gigs in Joburg actually, where we did it with him, obviously traveling with him. So that was the second artist I would say that introduced me to just becoming more out there of a muser instead of a muser just playing in your room and running the streets type of thing. Because then you end up seeing your your son Johannes them playing. Because obviously coming at the gig or at the festival like that, you have the backstage talks and all that, and you realize, okay, this one is here, that one is there. And now the scene starts for you as a youngster, you growing your networking almost like per se. Kanye was next, and then after that, years after that again, but then I started working again because by then, between Mahmoud and Kanye, I almost did it full time, I would say. But then also I got to the realization that, look, yeah, I need to still provide. I won't be able to just get away with this 250 year, 500 a day type of setup. And then I decided, you know what, I need to go work if I want to get married, if I want to buy a house or car. I need to get married and I need to sort myself out. Because I could see at that time it wasn't and come stable because my background didn't really have the thing where I need to go beg for stuff, man. Not that we had a lot. I think we had little growing up, but we appreciated that little. So I told myself, you know what, rather go back into the system. I call it the system. Go work and then rather enjoy music, come back and enjoy music. And that's what I did. So there was a gap in between Kanye and then I met up with Rustin Jazz. He was again different music. Like I said, all different styles of music. Meeting up with him was also fun in the sense of he was our age, so we could engage, and the setup was different. So we did a few shows with him. One or two of the shows I was his MD for his music. We didn't record with him, but we did most of his live shows because obviously his music was already in place. So he just needed a band sort of to run this thing, almost like promoting his music. Rusdin was the next artist. That was about 3-4 years ago, I would say. After that, it became quiet for me in the sense of then family life again. Kids are growing up and life basically happens. So because the first, and I mean, I got married and everything, life was so normal. I had my first, my daughter, and then it was still normal. But you know, when you get to a certain point in your life where you need to almost like look back and tell yourself, you know, music is who you are. But when there's no music, there's family. Once you come back home, there's still family. And I had to almost like cut down on certain things that I did. Hence, I started just a small setup at home just for me to keep busy in the sense. But I think Ruzin was the last actual artist that I played with besides the random ones. I call them random ones because random could have been anyone from your D-Low at the street festival to with your Celeste Williams. Okay, Celeste Williams was also part of the Kanye band when the keyboard player couldn't make it. Then Celeste was our keyboard player also there. So yeah, that's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. But thank you for that, man. Can you tell us about the gear that you are using?
Okay, gear. I've been chopping and changing over the years. Started with
Gear that you're using currently.
currently. Okay, I see where you go. Currently, I've got the Yamaha TRB with me. This bass was one of my, not the specific one, same model basically, was one of my first brand new basses that I could buy myself. And that was about more than 10 years ago. What happened was this bass was, or my bass was stolen with my car. Actually, the car was hijacked and the bass was in the car. And I mean, I only had the bass like for a few months. So I didn't even play with the bass really. Um, Forwarding years later, a friend of mine, same bass, similar bass and everything, he decided he want to sell his bass. And I was like, this is my opportunity because, like I said, there's obviously something, when you choose something, there's something about you that's almost like grabbing this bassman. If you play, there was something that stole my heart with this bass. So when he told me, look at Walter, he's selling the bass, and if you want it, you can have it. Then I was like, okay, let me just play around with it. I felt it. And I knew immediately this is the reason why I bought it 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I mean, I didn't play it a lot then, but even now playing it, whenever I play it, it comes back to me like this is the reason why I actually love this bass. It's the playability for me. It's easy, hands down. It's easy. I've been through a few basses, and this for me was easy. This one, and then I've got another Yamaha, the RXB, the 4-string. It's not the active one, but again, the playability for me, just taking that bass and being creative immediately, plugged, unplugged. For me, that is key, man. So the 4-string for me again was, I still use it like a practice bass because I can, like I said, I can grab it and I would enjoy the playing whether it's plugged in or not. Then about a year ago, just more than a year, I just browsed Facebook a bit. Then I saw the Marcus Miller, the V7. I thought when I saw that, and I'm like, look, I've been dreaming about the Fender for years, telling myself I
I
need,
have the same nightmare, don't worry.
and I told myself I need to get me a Fender. And a friend of mine on the web then had a Fender. And luckily or fortunate for me, I could play with his Fender so randomly because we had the same church. So he would allow me to either have it or play around with it. And then I was like, really, there's really something about the Fender. And I mean, we see guys playing Fenders and all these other basses, but you don't realize what it is about the bass that really makes it, man. And Fender's got this long-standing thing of it's same tone every day, wherever you go, irrespective of what you're plugging into, is like the same tone that you get. Then I read up a bit on the Fenders and looking at what's similar to Fender. Then I got to the V7, the Marcus Miller. So like I said, then I got another friend, Andre Donovan Henry. He had one for sale. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to speak to this guy, man. I didn't have all the cash even at the time. And I just thought, look, I can't let this because I didn't find this even in South Africa because if I do my homework, importing it was like crazy. Then I might as well invest in a Fender because of the amount of money that I would pay for it. Then he was like, you know what? If you really want it and you're a man of your word, I'll keep it for you. If you give the money and whatever the balance is, once you're done with the balance, you can fetch a guitar. So that is how I got to this guitar. So this is actually a blessing for me, the Marcus, because again, that then changed my mindset around quality. I mean, coming from your chords, your whatever other basses, then I realized the quality of the guitar, the tone that you get, changes even your way of playing. That was for me. It might be different for different people, but that changed for me, and I started respecting that. Because I give you a Mercedes, but you want to drive it like it's a Ford Cortina type. It's not the same, man. You know, that quality comes with the quality playing, I would say. So, but like I say, with the whole musical experience, learning the beauty of music, having the guitar now that comes with its own beautiful sound, beautiful tone, beautiful feel to it, allowed me to explore a bit more in a different space of music for me. From the Marcus, I moved to a 6-string Ashula, very rare model. I know there was about 200 that was made of these guitars. The 4 fretted strings, and then your bottom 2 is fretless. So beautiful guitar. And when I saw it even the first time, again, that is even a blessing to me because the guy that had the guitar, I mean, I knew him from nowhere. He actually had a P bass that I wanted to buy, and then I didn't buy it because I didn't like the condition of the bass. But then he's like, look, I've got this other bass also, and I checked it out. And from there we started chatting, and he was like, you know what, if you really want it, give me a price, and even it wasn't even a cash deal type of thing. If you have the money now, you can give me the difference again later. But even later, he dropped the price. So he told me, you know what, if you really want it, it's yours. And again, it was all about if I'm a man of my word, it's gonna be yours. And that I'm always trying to stick to that whenever I do any deals like that. That base is really preference, I would say. You need to have a different setup. It's not like your everyday base that you will run around with. I'm through 4 bases now. Yeah, that's 4. So that is my latest. Like I say, that was the latest base. Actually, the Yamaha is the latest because this one came afterwards. So gear wise, when it comes to amps, I've got the GK. This is the 100 watt that I'm playing. What I like about it's we coming from an era where we used to play PVs, man. And I did a gig once at the Civic Center where I had a was that the Roland amps also, that fat small ones, and I had to not even the cube, but yeah, and I had to carry this thing from one side of the building to the time I got to the gig, I was already tired of just carrying an amp, and I told myself I actually gave the amp basically away. I had another PV that I gave away because weight-wise didn't work for me. When I got the hold of the GK, there was a guy that sold the GK. And again, did my homework. I tried to always be on top of things with just technical side of things, man. So the GK versus the others, the 100 watt in this 10 inch gave me what I want. And I was quite surprised with the tone that I got out of it versus other amps. Even the bigger amps, I must say. The GK really stood out for me. What I then did was I always wanted to maintain the same tone also right across. So even if I have to go play, at least I had a smaller setup that I can just set up for myself as a bassist. And I didn't want to get big stuff, even the big GT pedals and all that. What I did was I think Carlo Zwister had a discussion once when someone asked him, how do you maintain your tone whenever you play? It's the same tone that you get and all that. And he mentioned about the Boss GT 1B, which is a very small pedal, but very powerful in the sense of straight to the point. There's no extra unnecessary switches and buttons and knobs to. You set up your pedal once, and you're done with the setup. From there, you get to your gig, you plug in, you play.
Plug and play. That's
Plug and play. That's basically what it is. And what I like about it, especially when you do, and I think Son touched on this one, where if you are line out or even live recordings and all that, so your compressors, your tone, you don't have that overbearing tones when you play through it, man. That's a pedal that I have. So basically, I just have a pedal, amp, and my bass. That's it.
That's all you need.
That's basically it.
And an audience.
And an audience. And I mean, sometimes as a musician, if you close your eyes, you don't even need an audience.
Exactly. Walter, can you give us can you give the people out there any advice, like any advice for young up and coming bass players and musicians?
Okay, up and coming, I would say there's the thing, like I've been mentioning now right through this interview, where be a man of your word, man. I think it's key growing up again. I'm not perfect. I had my ups and downs when it comes to these things, and obviously there's Afrikaans saying, but I can't say it. But anyway, I've paid the price for it. Like I say, you may become late to a gig, make an example. That would be your last gig, possibly, with that artist even. Or you get to a gig and your guitars are not tuned or whatever the case may be. It's like, look after your instrument, man. Yeah. As a youngster growing up, I was taught that this is your workhorse, man. If you don't have this, and I mean that time I did it full time, if I didn't have a bass, I would have been broke every day. But because of this, I was able to at least provide somewhat to a certain extent. Look after your gear. Look after it. Like, if you need to clean it. If you need to replace strings, like even with a car, if your tires are slick and all that, you need to replace it. You need that attention to detail sometimes. And what I normally do is I would take time out randomly to strip the guitar,
Mm.
string wise and all that, and just give it a deep clean.
Mm.
If I have to replace strings, depends on when I bought the strings, I will replace it if I have to. But just keep it in that mint condition.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah.
And I think when you meet up with people with that condition, or that mint condition instruments, you really start to appreciate your game. Man. Because you're gonna get people that you see, look at this guy didn't even look over this guitar, it's like knocking here and strings looking like this and fretboard. You can see it's actually double darker. The shade is much darker
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
of. So be a man of your word. Look after your instruments and be humble, man. We all in the same race. There's no different race from being a muso. I think I want to enjoy playing. I want you to enjoy my playing, and likewise with any other muso. Then even if you add money to it, money shouldn't make you change who you are. Man.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why I said when I started working first, because I told myself having to wait for money at the gig changed my way of playing, because I played for this. I came late sometimes because last week you paid me late, or last week you paid me short, or whatever the case may be, versus me then coming back into the scene a bit more stable, even mentally stable in the sense. So then I ended up enjoying music more. So my playing was different.
Yeah, yeah.
Playing from a joyful space, man,
Yeah.
versus playing from I don't have electricity at home. My wife is waiting for the last gigs money, and stuff like that. My kids don't have food. You start playing different. Your whole aura is different. So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, that's not music. When I just doing it for the money, and that's a different thing. I'm not saying money is not important, but what I'm saying is have a balanced lifestyle when it comes to even being a muso. Even with that said, don't waste your money on unnecessary things. And I mean, even if I'm talking about my pedals, it's later on in the years that
Yeah,
I only started buying stuff like this. Way back, it was bass, my cable, and that was it. If I had an amp, I was blessed to have an amp. But growing up, where we grew up, there wasn't always that luxury, man.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you get paid, either invest that money somewhere where you know what, later on that will come back to you, because there might not be gigs for, like now in lockdown, there might not be gigs for the next 3-4 months. Then the last 5 years you've been spending, even buying expensive gear sometimes, versus do you really need it, man? Sometimes a 5,000 rand guitar, or even like I say the RXB Yamaha, is probably one of the cheapest guitars that I
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
But I'm telling you again, it's a guitar that will still do the work, man.
Yeah,
Because again, the guitar is just a tool. You need to bring that to the party. You need to bring that to the bass, because this bass means nothing if I'm not going to play it. And even when I play, the way I played would always also tell a different story. So just don't waste money. If you can save up, save for the rainy days. Save for the rainy days, because there might not be another opportunity to save, man. So I always have this ratio thing, or maybe it's a tiding thing also, where if you're not 10% or 5% of whatever you get, put it away. Because later on you will realize, should a bargain comes up, maybe something that you really wanted, then at least you prepared for it. You don't always want to look back and like, I don't have. I think our mentality around music as musicians really need to change, versus just doing music because of, man.
Yeah.
Because I think we're missing the mark when it's just doing music.
Walter, thank you so much, my brother. Godspeed on your journey, man. Thank you for making time for me and for giving some valuable information to the
That
to
was a
the
lot
to
said,
the
yeah.
to the bass world out there and to the rest of the community. But thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much for liking and sharing this video with your family and friends. Please follow from the Cape with Bass on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much. God bless you.